Today I'd like to tell you a little bit about sociobiology, or the study and interpretation of evolutionary reasons behind animals' social behavior. Social behavior is any interaction between two or more animals. To understand the underlying reasons for how animals act, we need to understand the differences between proximate and ultimate causes. Take the wombat, for instance. It poops cubes. Why does it poop cubes? Well, the proximate, or immediate cause, would be that it has special bones in its hindquarters that shape the scat into cubish form. But the ultimate cause, the evolutionary explanation for this, is that the wombat marks its territory by leaving its poop on logs and rocks, and the poop is more likely to stay put if it's cubed. Of course, many animal behaviors are innate, or instinctive, under genetic control and perform the same way across the entire species. Some innate behaviors are so complex that they become fixed action patterns, unchangeable series of actions started by a specific stimulus, like birds learning how to fly. Of course, these patterns can be especially important in helping the species adapt and become better suited to its environment, like if those birds happen to be learning how to fly on the edge of a cliff. But their genes don't determine everything about them. The idea that both genes and the environment influence behavior is known as nature versus nurture. Sure, some of the birds' innate behaviors and learning styles and other things are in their DNA, but they're just as influenced by the way their parents raised them or where they live. Speaking of learning, there are actually 7 different types of it: habituation, imprinting, spatial learning, cognitive mapping, associative learning, social learning, and problem solving. Habituation is when an animal stops responding to something after they've been exposed to it a lot. If you touch a turtle, it might get spooked and retreat into its shell. But if you keep doing it, the turtle will eventually learn that you're not a threat, just a nuisance, and it can focus its attention on more important stimuli. Imprinting is irreversible learning during a sensitive time period in an animal's life, like ducklings learning to follow their mother around. Spatial learning is when animals use landmarks to understand the structure of their environment, like a rat remembering how a maze is set up to get to the food at the end. Cognitive mapping is similar to spatial learning, when animals have an internal map of a larger environment. Whales and birds use this in migration, navigating by the coastline and stars, respectively. Associative learning is like dog training or trial and error learning, changing behavior based on linking a certain action with reward or punishment. Social learning is when animals observe and mimic others, like predators learning to hunt by watching their parents. And finally, problem solving is inventive behavior as a response to a new situation, like tool making in chimpanzees. Many of the problems animals solve have to do with getting food, or foraging. The ideal method for each animal is known as optimal foraging, where they look for the food that provides the most energy for the least energy, and has the smallest risk of turning them into something else's food. For instance, smaller prey might be easier to catch, but they provide less energy, so they need to catch more of them than larger prey. Part of how animals accomplish optimal foraging is through a search image that helps them to find a particular food. It's like when you get separated from your friend in a large crowd. You know that they were wearing, say, a cowboy hat, so you look not for them, but for cowboy hats, and from there you can efficiently rejoin your group. Communication is just as important to animals as foraging, and includes sending, receiving, and responding to signals, but these signals can change based on which species is sending them. Diurnal, or daytime species, like white-tailed deer, tend to use visual or auditory signals, like flashing their tails to tell other deer of danger. Nocturnal, or nighttime species, like bats, tend to use odor or sound, like male bats singing to female bats in courtship rituals. Courtship rituals vary wildly from species to species, but they all have a common goal of establishing 4 simple criteria to potential mates: that they are of the same species, of the opposite sex, physically able to mate, and not a threat to them. Should this go well, there are 3 main options for animal relationships: promiscuous, monogamous, and polygamous. Promiscuous relationships are just how they sound. There are no strong pair bonds, and males and females do not form lasting relationships. Monogamous ones, on the other hand, are usually between one male and one female, and both parents care for offspring. Finally, polygamous animals form bonds between one male and many females, or vice versa. Not all animal behavior has to do with mating, of course. There's also territory and dominance. An animal's territory is a fixed area defended by individuals who keep out members of the same species. Territories can be used for feeding, mating, and raising offspring, and are often defended by animals marking their territory, like dogs peeing in strategic locations or our good friend the wombat leaving square poops on the perimeter. They can also be defended through agonistic behavior. Whenever a resource is limited, like food, territory, or mates, animals use agonistic behavior to decide who gets control over it. This can include threats, rituals, or even combat, and can directly affect an individual's evolutionary fitness. In social groups, agonistic behavior or other interactions can rank individuals into dominance hierarchies, like chicken's pecking order. But animals aren't all selfish and brutal. They have altruistic behavior as well. Altruism is a behavior that makes an animal less fit, evolutionarily, but that increases the fitness of others. This can be anything from sharing food to protecting weaker members of the group. These behaviors can be passed on genetically, especially through kin selection, or altruism that benefits an individual's offspring or other family members, thus protecting and passing on altruistic genes. So to recap, sociobiology studies the proximate and ultimate causes for social behavior, which is influenced both by genetics and the environment. Animals learn through 7 different methods to find food, mates, and territory. And despite all their agonistic behavior and dominance hierarchies, altruism is just as common in other species as in ours.